Hey guys, today I'm doing my December wrap up and I read quite a lot of books this month, so just getting straight into it. The first book I read this month was You Know Me Well by Nina LaCour and David Levithan. This one I gave 4 stars. I thought it was a really good coming of age sort of novel, and I think I probably would have enjoyed it more if I was still in high school, but yeah, I thought it was a great contemporary novel about love and friendship and pride. Yeah, it was an enjoyable read. One of my favourite quotes from it was, "Most lives are long and most pain is short," which is very simple but very true. The second book I read this month was Man Up by Jack Irwin. This was a non-fiction book about toxic masculinity. I think a lot of people's concerns about books like this are the fact that it might be kind of the opposite to feminism, but actually it was very like parallel to feminism in a lot of ways, and it kind of gave a lot of nods to it and kind of acknowledged it, which was really good. One thing that really struck me as quite interesting from this book was about the concept of a tomboy, so girls who are into like boyish kind of things, like sport and stuff like that when they're little. It's just interesting the fact that there's nothing similar to that for boys who are into girlish things, and how tomboys are like completely socially acceptable and a really commonly used phrase, and kind of used endearingly, like as a affectionate way of describing a girl's interests, but there's no equivalent for that for boys who are into things that are more commonly associated with the opposite sex. So I thought that was a really interesting point, and obviously something that's quite problematic with how we're viewing gender, especially with children. I really liked the writing style. It was quite informal and kind of humorous at points without diminishing the seriousness of the subject at hand. The things I didn't love so much about it was just the fact that I think this was Jack Irwin's first book, and he kind of made a big deal about that and was a little bit self-deprecating in a lot of places, like, I can't believe I'm writing a book, and it's kind of, I just wish he had left that out of it, because it just made it kind of unprofessional and it was distracting from the really good work that he was doing. And the other thing I will mention is the fact that some of his sources he included, because he included his references and stuff at the back of the book, a lot of his sources for different statistics and stuff came from the Daily Mail and other sort of dubious sources, so I wasn't a big fan of that, just because I think if you're writing a book you should probably delve a little bit deeper than those kind of websites for your information. Statistics can be skewed in very particular ways, and that's something that really grates on my nerves a lot of times, is when people use statistics to kind of like try and manipulate the way people view a situation. That was something that bothered me, but overall I gave it 4 out of 5 stars because I did still think it was a really interesting look at an important topic. The third book I read this month was The Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. This one you've probably heard of. It's a YA fantasy novel. I thought it was a really cool and unique kind of concept, not something I've come across before. Pretty much it's a world with 3 different types of monsters, and there's a girl who's not a monster, she's a human, but she kind of wants to be a monster, and there's a monster who really just wants to be human. Romantic as that sounds, there is actually no romance in this novel, which I thought was really, really refreshing for YA, because I kind of didn't think about it until I read this book, but I am a little sick of romance in YA, so I thought this was a really nice change of, you know, breath of fresh air kind of thing. It was really fast paced as well, so I gave this 4 out of 5 stars as well. The next 3 books I read were volumes 3, 4, and 5 of Attack on Titan. These are manga, and I read the first couple last month. Number 3 I gave 4 stars to. It was just as good as the one that came before it. There was also a really interesting observation of humanity in here, which I'll just read out the quote to you. "Human beings were constantly murdering each other over tribal disputes and ideologies. Back then, supposedly someone said that if a powerful non-human enemy appeared, humanity would probably unite and stop fighting itself." And I just think that's a really interesting point, because it makes me wonder, like, if we were like invaded by aliens or something, would we band together or would we still be fighting amongst ourselves? And I think, to be honest, we would still be fighting amongst ourselves. So, but yeah, interesting theory. Volumes 4 and 5 though, on the other hand, I gave 3 stars to. Volume 4, which is this one, had a whole lot of backstory that I just wasn't that interested in. Backstory of like their training. It just felt like the story wasn't really moving forward because they were looking back, and it kind of felt like a filler book. You know, in series sometimes you have that one book that doesn't really develop, so that was this one. There was also a character called Sasha who I just really didn't like. She was kind of just the butt of everyone's jokes, and I just thought that was really kind of weird. And then yeah, volume 5 I also gave 3 stars to. It was good, but it just wasn't, it didn't really have that like a special something that I feel like the first few did. The next book I read was After the Woods by Kim Savage. I've done a full book review of this, which is up on my channel. I'll link it down below if you want to check it out, but I gave this 2 out of 5 stars. I also read This Song Will Save Your Life by Layla Sales. This one was kind of a pleasant surprise to me because I had read a book by Layla Sales before and really didn't enjoy it. This one I really loved. I read it because Emma Books recommended it. She said it was one of her favorites and it was so good. I felt like it was really realistic. All the characters just felt really real and authentic. It dealt with some quite serious issues and I just really loved the protagonist, even though I don't know, I just really liked her. I found her relatable, and I would say definitely if I was still a teenager in high school, I would have 100% given this 5 stars. I think just because I'm a little bit older and some of the things it's dealing with aren't especially relevant to me anymore, I gave it 4 stars. It was a 4-star read for me, but I highly recommend this. I really enjoyed it. There was a really nice quote in it. I feel like this is the month of reading out quotes, but I'm gonna read this one out to you as well because I really liked it. Sometimes people think they know you. They know a few facts about you and they piece you together in a way that makes sense to them. And if you don't know yourself very well, you might even believe that they are right. But the truth is that isn't you. That isn't you at all. The next book I read was Is It Just Me by Miranda Hart. This was a really funny read. It was exactly what I would have expected from Miranda Hart. If you've watched her TV show or any of her comedy and you like it, I think you'll like this book because her voice is very distinct and it comes across exactly as she is in this, which I really liked that. And it was really funny, and plus it was quite relatable, and it was just very lighthearted. There's nothing particularly serious dealt with in this book at all. It's just like the title kind of says it all. Is it just me? She just talks about situations where she's like, I wonder, is this just me, or you know, whatever, and it's just a funny relatable thing. So I really enjoyed this. It was a fun read. I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was probably honestly one of my least favorites for the month. It was Dorothy Must Die by Danielle Page. I just can't remember the last time that I enjoyed a book so little. I just really wasn't captivated by it at all, like whatsoever. For a retelling, it was original. Like obviously it's not The Wizard of Oz as you know it, but the choices that she made still just felt very obvious, and I feel like there wasn't that much originality in this story. Like it's so like tropey and stuff that it just didn't feel interesting to me. The characters kind of had no character, if that makes sense. I felt like none of them really had a personality. They just kind of had these like really forced characteristics. So I wasn't a big fan of this book. I just couldn't get into it and I didn't care what happened to anyone. Yeah, I definitely won't be continuing with this series. I gave it 2 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was an audiobook. It was The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wolleben, which don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I discovered it's because he is German. So the original book of this was translated from German, and Peter is a guy that manages like forests for forestry, I guess, and he, over his years of research and stuff, he's learned how trees best operate. The title of his book is The Hidden Life of Trees, What They Feel, How They Communicate. The book was kind of a whole lot of personification, to be honest with you. It was interesting, like he was saying a lot of stuff about trees that I didn't know. It should have been titled How Trees Work, basically, because it just tells you how they survive, how they grow, different things that they do, and just facts about trees, which scientifically is quite interesting. But he would just use words to personify the things they do, and it was like trying to relate them to humans but using only personification, not using like actual things. It was, I can't think of a good example, because also the fact that this was an audiobook made it less enjoyable for me because it was so long. It was listening to it every day for like weeks. So I'm not a big fan of audiobooks, at least I learned that. But yeah, and the other thing about that is that I just didn't soak in as much as I would have if I was reading it as a physical book, I think. So I can't think of any specific examples, but he would say something about the tree, about how it, you know, the tree soaks up the nutrients. You could say the tree is eating. So he'd say these things and then be like, you could say the tree is crying, or you could say the tree is talking. I don't know. It was just a lot of personification. I like that there's someone out there who's so passionate about trees that they really want to share that with other people. So I enjoyed that about it. I did learn a lot about trees. I liked the person who did the voice. I think it was really good. It felt like I was just listening to a nature documentary, so it was kind of nice. But yeah, I just wasn't especially thrilled by this, so I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. The final book that I'll mention is one that I DNF'd. DNF, if you don't know, means did not finish. I think that's what it means. I'm just having like a complete mind blank. But anyway, I DNF'd this book. I got a fair way through. Like there's one animal for each letter of the alphabet, and I think I got up to like J maybe, but yeah, I got up to J. So I didn't get very far through the alphabet, but far enough to know that this book wasn't for me. So it's the Book of Barely Imagined Beings by Casper Henderson, and it's a bestiary, so it's just a kind of little collection of information about different beasts, except there were two things that put me off this book. The first one is that most of the beasts selected were creatures of the sea, like different types of fish and things like that, and to be honest, I'm just not that interested in sea creatures, and that's just me personally. They just don't hold that much appeal. There was a chapter on dolphins, which I found really, really interesting because dolphins are fascinating, and yeah, I guess there's a lot of research out there about them, so there's a lot of interesting facts about them. But yeah, other than that, there were a lot of sea creatures, just wasn't that interested in them. I was more expecting like forest creatures and stuff. And also a lot of them selected were not especially uncommon. I was expecting, because it's called the Book of Barely Imagined Beings, I was expecting them to be really like outlandish, weird things that you never heard of, but dolphins, yeah, were one of them. Axolotls were one of them, which you have them in pet shops in New Zealand. I don't know if that's the same elsewhere, but yeah, just not that exciting. And the other thing I didn't like about it was that for each like chapter on each creature, he would just go off on random tangents about different stuff that was like loosely related to the creature he was talking about, but not really. Like he would go off on tangents about evolution and like the history of evolution, and it just wasn't that interesting to me. Oh wait, there's one more. I'm gonna throw this in here because I'm gonna be finished it by the time the month is over, so I'm not gonna mention it in my next wrap up, but I'm currently reading Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, and I have to say I am enjoying it. And a lot of people say this about this, but it's a weird one because it is a book about a pedophile, but the writing style is really beautiful, and the whole point is kind of obviously that he's insane. And I guess Vladimir Nabokov's like thing is writing really disturbed characters, delving into like how their minds work and stuff, so it's a really interesting work of fiction, and the writing is really, really beautiful, and I kind of feel like he's almost like wasted his beautiful writing style writing these insane characters, and I guess that shows a level of skill that you can write like a really horrible situation and make it sound beautiful, not in like a creepy way. He just has a way with words, but I feel like I wish he had written poetry or something. Did Vladimir Nabokov write poetry? Because I feel like he should have. So yeah, I don't know. But that is it for my wrap up for this month. I can't believe we're nearly at the end of December. I'm putting this up like before Christmas and everything, but I will have another video up before Christmas as well, so I'll see you guys for that one in a couple days. Thank you for watching. Bye.